U.S. Congressman August Pfluger from Texas, right smack dab in the middle of Texas. Congressman, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing great, and that was an interesting last part of the conversation. I represent the men and women of Fort Cavazos there in Killeen, Texas, so I think
there you go.
a great lead-in.
Well, I got to tell you, Congressman, we've had the phones open for about 2.5 hours, a couple guests in between, but about 2 hours total. And every single caller, except for 3, are against the ban, Congressman. This is a conservative radio show, and 98% of our callers are against banning TikTok. How about that? So I'm going to present to you all their arguments, but first let me lead it to you for the intro. Why are you for banning TikTok? Or let me ask this question. What does this bill specifically do?
Let's get the facts out there. You know, first off, the legislation that we're proposing is not a ban. It is not a ban at all. It is actually a divestment from a Chinese Communist Party-controlled entity called ByteDance. And so I hope that TikTok as a platform can remain. I hope that Americans can continue to use it, but we must acknowledge that right now it is headquartered on mainland China. Shou Chu sat not only in Congress, but in many of our offices and told us that it was in fact possible for the Chinese Communist Party to use their influence on the messaging and narrative and output that TikTok, one of its subsidiary companies, had on a daily basis. And so when you look at this legislation, the requirement is that TikTok divest itself from the parent company ByteDance, that it divest itself from an adversarial nation, and that it sell to a friendly company in a friendly nation. And it also includes not just the Chinese Communist Party issue, but it also includes countries like Iran and North Korea and Russia as adversarial countries who definitely have shown and demonstrated a will to undermine American interests everywhere around the world. So,
why would China sell?
Well, I mean it's going to be up to them on their own economic decision. I mean, we are basically drawing a line in the sand. They have this proposal called Project Texas, where they would move some of the operating to Texas, which, by the way, as a Texan, I really didn't like that, to tell you the truth. But they said, okay, we're going to propose to do that, but it doesn't move the back end, the algorithm, all of the data, the things that they've collected. I mean, they've collected millions and millions of data points about, over 150 million Americans, by the way. That was not good enough. We want them to sell to a company, any company here in the United States, that could make sure that they would protect the privacy, the data, and the nefarious uses that we know that they're capable of doing. But why would they sell? I mean, if they want the company to continue, then they need to sell. I want to make the point that when we marked this bill up last week in committee on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which I'm a member of, we had 50 yes votes and 0 no votes on it. It was completely bipartisan. The first time that has happened in years here in Congress. So, we've studied this issue now.
This could actually happen. That's amazing.
It is.
Yeah, that's amazing that this could actually be a thing. So, all right, well, I guess I don't know why China would sell it. And then even if they did, how much do we trust that they didn't put whatever mine in there that they need in order to keep the data or whatever? But we can cross that bridge later. If they don't sell it, would it then be banned?
If they do not sell it, if they do not divest it, then yes, it would be banned in the United States of America. And again, lawmakers are acknowledging here's a path. So why would they sell it? Because it's in their economic interest to do so, because it's in the future of that company, because we know that many people do use it. And we're not saying that you shouldn't be able to, but this is the first step when it comes to Congress looking at the privacy of every American. And certainly when you think about another country being able to shape the narrative on anything, think about any industry they don't like, fossil fuels in my district, elections throughout the United States and other countries. We have to protect Americans and protect them from a nefarious actor, which we know wants to undermine us.
Okay. All right. Let me give you the calls we had today. Congressman, this is a parental responsibility. I'm not asking for Congress to raise my kids for me. If parents want to ban TikTok in their home, then they can do so. Don't tell me how to raise my children.
Great point. I have children of my own, and we don't allow TikTok in my home, and we also have other restrictions on other social media platforms. However, the national security threat that we see from this particular platform because of its ties to the CCP are so egregious and are right here in our face. It's a Trojan horse that we have to be aware of. So it goes beyond the parenting. It's not just the parents we're worried about. It's the service member that just called that we're also worried about.
Okay. China already owns so much of our country, so many business. They own the NBA for the love of it, basically. They own so much of our movie industry. They're buying up land in America. They already have so much control over us. Who even cares about a little silly
Well,
app?
I wish that Congress would have acted way earlier on the Chinese Communist Party purchasing farmland, ranch land adjacent to military bases. But that doesn't mean, that's the worst argument I've heard yet. That doesn't mean that we don't do nothing. I mean, we have to act. And I think when you really look at this, information is a tool of warfare. I served in the military for over 2 decades. Information is a very, very effective tool, and even more so now because of platforms like this. So that's actually the worst argument I've heard yet on it.
I heard that. We got about 5 of those in a row,
Well,
by the way.
I hope we can push back on that
which
one.
is very interesting. Yeah, no, it was wild. It was bizarre. It was like I kept taking that exact same call formulation in 5 different ways. Okay, Congressman, there's a wonderful conservative community on TikTok. Okay, we had a couple of people call in and they said, Slater, you don't understand. There's so many great conservatives. That's how I became a conservative, by watching videos on TikTok. And you can't take this away from me, because you would be destroying a way that conservatives are able to communicate with each other and get news. Unlike any other app, TikTok is unique in that way, and you can't take that away. You would be hurting the conservative movement. We got about 3 of those.
Well, let's just set the record straight here. Do you remember what happened on October 7th? Do you remember the anti-Jewish message that came out, pro-Hamas message that came out, that completely shaped the narrative of the things that were happening around our country, the demonstrations and the protests? So yes, I do understand that there's conservatives on TikTok. This isn't about conservatives being on TikTok. This is about the ability of a company that is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party to shape a narrative that could be for or against any issue, but they can dial it up, heat up the message, and cool it off. We want TikTok as a platform to continue. We just want it to be controlled by somebody other than the Chinese Communist Party.
Facebook, Congressman, Facebook's the real problem. They're the real enemy of the people. And you ban TikTok, you're just going to make Facebook more powerful.
Look, this is about control of a company from a nefarious foreign adversary. Part 2 of what we are looking at in Congress is to make sure that every American is safe and that their data remains private, that they know what the fine print says, whether it's Facebook or whether it's X. I mean, look at what Elon Musk has done in the past 8 or 9 months with X. He has basically turned it back into a platform that doesn't favor one candidate or another in the elections for our president. So I don't disagree that action is not needed on other platforms. It is, and it comes in the form of privacy. And by the way, as a father of 3 daughters, I take this very seriously.
Why not just put in an age verification? Someone called and asked.
You know, those things are already in place on many platforms. But again, and I love this. This is like rapid fire town hall style. This is great. I love it. But again, it's not just children. I mean, by the way, do you know we had hundreds of phone calls last week? And several of the children that called, we could hear them in school. TikTok directed them to enter their zip code. That zip code linked them to my office and other congressmen and women's offices. They called in, and let me tell you, and I quote, "If I don't have TikTok," some of the children said, "I will kill myself." That is what the power of this nefarious actor can be. If they can do that to kids, guess what? They can do it to anybody, and they can shape the narrative in a very negative way.
Yeah, so when I first heard of this potential TikTok ban, or divestment, potentially ban, my first thought was, holy cow, I don't think you boomers, I'm not saying you potentially, the boomers in DC, are prepared for the wrath from 100 million addicted kids to be unleashed upon Washington, D.C. like never before. There's 170 million active users on Facebook in America. So let's say there's 100 million of them are kids. Holy cow. And it turns out, sure enough, so all these staffers are putting out some of the phone calls y'all have received. The guy said, I want to not ban TikTok. The staffer says, okay, I'll pass along the message. That's all you can do? Well, I'm not a member of Congress. I can't vote, but I can pass along the message. Seriously, blank you, blank that. You're worthless. You should kill yourself. Use a knife, put it on Facebook Live so I can celebrate a worthless life being gone. Thanks for your comment. Actually, use a gun. It'll be more effective, you worthless piece of blank. This is all over an app. Yes, you blank. It's like crazy, crazy comments. So what are you going to say? What are you going to do to the 12-year-old? Seriously, right? Because I mean, I don't know. Does that matter? But the 12-year-olds who are going to freak out, not only on you, but just in life. Like, I don't know if you've ever taken a video game away from a kid before, something like that. It ain't pretty. What are you going to do when TikTok doesn't work anymore?
You're right. There are going to be many adolescents, many children who freak out, many adults who freak out. And I think, that highlights just how important this is. Our constituents sent us up here to protect this country. We took an oath and that we swore that we would protect this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And there is a reason that 12 and 15 and 17-year-olds are not elected to Congress, and our founders knew that. Look, I'm not saying this is easy because it is not easy. This is not a ban. This is forcing a divestment from a very, very dangerous company. And I hope that they make the right decision. And I hope that the lobbyists, the Americans who are working on behalf of TikTok, will urge the company to divest from ByteDance so that we can continue to have this. But on a larger part, we have to admit that the Chinese have been playing a very long game. And this is part of that game. When you infiltrate society, when you infiltrate through a platform where you can immediately shape the narrative and immediately get a message out that could undermine our own interest, both at home and abroad, then we have to act in a way that is in the interest of the security of the United States and our national security interests. So that's what we're doing.